Hello and welcome everyone to another Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. My name is Nina Joshi, and today we will be bringing out HITLAB fellow Alexia Priest. As you know, we love questions here at Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, so if you have any for Alexia during our conversation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And so with that, would like to formally bring on our guest, Alexia. Hi, Alexia. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Nina. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to be speaking with all of you. I look a lot different from my picture. By the way, as you can see, the white, I used to color my hair since I was young because I went white early. So,
well, you look great. We love the hair.
Thanks.
And so maybe to kind of kick things off for our conversation today, would love if you could tell us in the audience a little bit more about yourself and your journey into the healthcare space.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. From an education perspective, I received a BBA with a focus on economics from the University of Miami and an MBA with a focus on economics at the University of New Haven. I also began a PhD program in economics at Fordham University, but after a car accident, I had to back out of that. And so now I have to do it online so I don't have to travel. And so I'm in the middle of starting back up with a PhD in management. And the focus will be on strategy and innovation, which I think will be cool. Yes.
Very fitting.
Yes. So my work experience started, oddly enough, as an executive training program in retail. And that was, back then, that was the likely spot for women who wanted to get into business to start, because retail was very female friendly, if you will. Okay. So, and then I became a buyer in cosmetics, which was at a high-end store, chain store, I guess, in California, which was a ton of fun. It really was, but you know, retail doesn't pay all that well, but it's a lot of fun. And you learn so many things because you're responsible also for profit and loss within your group. And while I was out in California, I received an opportunity to interview with Hewlett Packard. And I'm going, retail? HP, you know, how is that going to work? But I thought about it and I said, well, it's the same skill sets. It's all about supply and demand, really. Okay. So I got the interview and obviously got the job. And from there, I stayed in purchasing, strategic sourcing, materials management, all the way up. Even entered into pharma, but I went through the data communications industries, the telecom communication industry, broadband communication industry, and then the pharma industry.
Wow.
And I remember interviewing for pharma, I got the same question that I got when I was interviewing from the cosmetics buyer into the HP, like, how do you think you're going to do going into pharma? You've never been in pharma. And I said, a widget's a widget, right? Yeah. So, and my jobs took me through a lot of different states, which I'm grateful for, because I think there's an eclectic mix of people across the country. And it sort of reminds you a little bit of Europe, because you really do have different cultures in each part of the country. You know, the Southern style, because I was in Georgia, is much different than the West Coast style, which is obviously much different than the East Coast style. But I really enjoyed all my positions. And then my last position in pharma, for the last 15 years was still transactions in contracting, but it was a higher level. It was business development and licensing where you did global agreements.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. What a career. So kind of just transcending all of these different industries. Was there any specific like catalyst that made you want to work into the healthcare space? Or did you just kind of fall into it?
Well, I kind of leaned into it because I was interested in, I had all the, the data, telecom, whatever, the communication sector. And I thought, I grasped that really well. And I said, I don't really have the knowledge per se, direct knowledge of what the pharmaceutical industry goes through, right?
Right.
And I wanted to acquire that. And, and in the pharma industry, the healthcare industry, you're helping to save people's lives. In the digital space or the telecom space, you're working on transferring data or signals or what have video, whatever. Okay. But this, lent itself to really thinking about, okay, you're making an impact on people's lives potentially. Right. Okay. And you're doing your part in the chain, if you will. And who would have thought that digital would come in handy years later in the pharma?
Totally.
Most of my agreements were novel agreements when I was in the BD&L space in pharma, and meaning they were very different. I was able to structure agreements that allowed for people to take advantage of learning. Like my agreements, what we did is we negotiated a strategic hub for developing new therapeutic concepts. And then the very last agreement that I did before I retired out of the pharma industry was a digital SAMD. It was the big deal, collaboration. It was a research, development, and commercialization of an app, an SAMD.
Nice. Wow. So you've done it all.
Yeah, it was really cool. That one was tough because I think we all know that, it's been difficult for pharma to enter into the space.
Right.
Because, if you look at the way their development cycle goes, it's so much different than technology. And if you did the development cycle like you do a drug, you'd always be behind.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. What a career. And for those who don't know, before you had your kind of career in the healthcare industry, you were also an athlete, which is incredible. Would love if you could share with us how, being an athlete has shaped your career and, some of the lessons that you've learned from that experience.
Yeah. And this is where I think empowering women is really important. And I say this because early on, I started in swimming, and what I saw is this is real early. I started when I was 6 years old. So, and what I saw is that women were extremely competitive. Okay. And they, loads of time, it wasn't supporting the wins,
right?
But it was more competing against, which was odd because I sort of grew up with brothers, so I was used to the guy thing, if you will, and everybody supporting one another. So it was different for me. And then in high school, there weren't any women's athletics. You had to really swim AAU, which is American Athletic Union. You didn't have the high school swim meets, etc.
Oh, wow.
But I used to work out with the guys all the time. And then when I went to college, there weren't any athletic women's scholarships either.
Oh, wow.
And what we did, though, I swam at the University of Miami. We instituted women's athletic scholarships there, and we were the first in the country. And they were athletic scholarships.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was really cool. But even that, you found more people competing for like the spotlight, as opposed to really, I think it was the beginning of a little bit, you could see the melding of women supporting other women, a few of them here and there and getting together. And I think that's really important. If you look at it, obviously the men in the industries, the working industries anyway, they've had this for a long time because that was the dominant, if you will, sex in the industry. So, and I think if we as women work on celebrating all of our successes, I think we're going to be so far ahead. And I think that will catapult us to another level. When I was living in Atlanta, a girlfriend of mine and I was in electronics at the time. We started Women in Electronics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And within that, what we had is like these educational once a month sessions where we would bring the top people in to talk about what's happening in the industry. Okay.
Oh, nice.
And then each year, what we would do is celebrate the success of women in electronics by rewarding the top 3 to 5 people that graduated with a degree in business and going into electronics, right, with a scholarship. And the scholarship was just, it was money that the female, the person winning it, could use it for whatever they wanted. And once a year, we had a huge party celebrating that. And what we found is by doing that, it brought women as well as men, because we invited all the sponsors, which were men and companies, all together to celebrate these women who were graduating and going out into the world.
That's amazing. It sounds like quite the party.
Oh, it was a big event.
That's incredible. And it's amazing that that was something that you saw that pain point and you were able to kind of create that from the ground up.
Yes. And it lasted quite a while, but once my friend and I, when we departed, it sort of slid down because I think we were, driving a lot of that. Right.
No, very understandable. You brought up 2 things that I would love to touch on. I think the first one is kind of going off of what you were doing, developing this type of a community. I know that a lot of companies, organizations have developed or are starting to develop, groups and programs that are, focused on supporting women within the organization. Would love to kind of get your take on this. What are some of the benefits of those types of groups? And are there any areas of improvement or things to consider for companies that are trying to develop some kind of space for women?
That's really very interesting. I think 3 years before I left BI, we were still doing this group of women, if you will. We would go to these learning experiences, if you will, and they lasted a whole year.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And you met once a month.
Mhm.
And then you learned how to navigate the industry
Mhm.
and the male dominated industries
Mhm.
too, if you will.
Right.
Okay. It would be great if we didn't have to focus on the male domination part all the time.
Right.
And but I think the groups are wonderful, where there's only females there because they can talk about the issues or the problems or the opportunities, etc. But I would caution that it doesn't remain always women, that maybe
Mhm.
you have meetings, and that's what we used to do in women electronics, where you would bring in the male counterparts or the male leadership team, if you will, and get
Yeah.
perspectives,
Mhm.
because then everyone gets to know one another and they
Absolutely.
begin to, I think it's sort of like another education session where, hey, these are some of the things that we're experiencing.
Mhm.
And then we, on the male counterparts, I remember I used to go around and interview all the higher level executives and
Mhm.
ask them, what are you looking for from
Yeah.
a female? And what do you see are the strengths of a female executive, the weaknesses, where they have to improve. And I think the more that we as females are open to
Mhm.
reach out and be brave and bold enough to ask those questions,
Right.
I think that's where we need to be.
Absolutely. And I love that you call out how it's important for it to be a shared space for both
Yes.
men and women to be able to have that opportunity to have that community. I think that's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
important.
Because if it's just like, I remember some of the men would say, oh, it's the woman's group, right?
Mhm.
And sort of make fun of it a little until they got engaged.
Right. Absolutely. And then question for you, just since you have such, expansive career, would love if you could share with us any, future trends within the women's healthcare space that you think that we should keep an eye out for or pay attention to.
Um, I think trends in the healthcare space, I mean, the digital trends for healthcare are astronomical.
Mhm.
That is going
Absolutely.
to fly off like no tomorrow. And if you really think about it, it's all, one of our biggest costs is healthcare in the world, right? And
Absolutely.
the more we can introduce a digital solution, making it easier, as well as helping patients,
Mhm.
okay, the better off we're going to be. So I strongly encourage, and I think that this is an excellent space for women in all areas, whether it be in research, development, like research meaning maybe developing genetic compounds or solutions, if you will,
Mhm.
as well as in the clinical space using the data and the digital experience to monitor, whether it be clinical trials, getting the data, and also infusing some digital solutions to ensure that you're getting the timely feedback. I
Right.
think all that's terrific, as well as making new products for
Mhm.
the industry.
Absolutely.
And it's wide open, as everybody knows. I mean,
Mhm.
there's lots to be had there, and finding your passion in what it is, and then just diving into it, I think is great. You have to have a passion for it, though, because
Mhm.
if you don't, you go into it and then you don't give it really 100%.
Yeah.
So, and it's always fun when you have a passion anyway,
Absolutely.
making it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important part of it. Absolutely. And then would love if you could share, you touched on this a little bit earlier about, being in industries that are typically, male dominated or have historically been. And I know that your group was kind of talking a lot about, how to navigate some of those or some of the advice that you have. Would love, is there anything that, stuck out to you during those conversations that you could share with us when it comes to just general advice or something that you've kind of learned from those conversations?
Yeah, well, along the way, what was interesting, I was involved in a lot of firsts, like the first female to work at a company that was like 99% male, right?
Oh, wow.
And that was very awkward because you were in large meetings and you were the only female, right? Then I went into, at one point I was a electronics rep, and I was the first female in that because it was the largest rep firm and it was repping different electronic components, etc. And it was fascinating to me because if you look at everything from the standpoint of seeing it as an opportunity to learn, and I'll share, this is kind of an awkward thing. The group of gentlemen thought that it would be a really keen idea to bring me as an initiation, and this was years ago, to a gentleman's club.
Oh my God.
Okay, and I'm going, okay. But what I did is I took the opportunity to speak with the females. And what I learned was so much about, the psychology behind what they're doing, why, etc., and how, I look at it as you could always learn something. So if you're put into an uncomfortable position and you're feeling awkward, my suggestion would be to flow with it, okay? And then to ask questions and try to get some learnings from it.
I like that. Like use it as every opportunity is an opportunity to learn.
Absolutely, because you never know where it's going to take you.
Right, absolutely. And then as we, wrap up our conversation, would love if you could share with us any just life lessons or career lessons that you've learned from, your work experience, your education, any just words of advice that you have for us at this time.
I think never say never or never say no. Always say yes, and never be afraid to do something different, unique. There was from SpaceX, right? There was this I've forgotten the name of it. It was something 4, okay, and it was 4 people that were not astronauts that went up in space. And one of the females spoke about that and how how she got her position was she had childhood cancer, okay, and she was at the child cancer center. What is it?
St. Jude's?
Yes, St. Jude's, okay. And I mean, just a long time. It was bone cancer, very difficult. But from that, what she ended up, she wanted to help people, okay? And she went back and she was now a nurse there. Oh, wow. Well, SpaceX found her and invited her to go up in the spaceship. That's because incredible. This whole program of these 4 individuals and not astronauts going to space was they combined it with a like a donation giving kind of thing, which was they gave $200 million to St. Jude. So I thought that was terrific.
That's amazing. And we thank you so much. We just got a comment. It's called Crew 4.
No, it's not Crew 4. It's something else.
Oh,
Crew
something else.
4 was the last 4 astronauts that went up. Okay. It was something else. Inspiration 4. That's what it was.
Very
Inspiration
cool.
4.
That's so interesting. Wow. So just always be open to opportunities, and that sounds, I mean, and then one day, who knows where you'll end up.
We may be in
Maybe
space.
in the stars. That's incredible.
Shoot for the moon, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Alexia, for just taking the time to chat with us today. And for everyone listening, if you want to hear more of Alexia's story, we have our symposium tomorrow for HITLAB, so please be sure to check that out. All the information is going to be in the chat. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much, Alexia, for taking the time today. It was an amazing conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone. And best of luck to everyone. Enjoy the journey.
Love it. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye, Alexia.
Bye-bye.
And remember, everyone, we have our next episode next Wednesday for AWS. So please be sure to check that out and go ahead and register. One last plug for the symposium tomorrow. All the information is in the chat. One huge shout out to Alexia one last time for taking the time to chat with us today. Also wanted to thank our sponsors, Goodwin and Witham, for this conversation, and see you all next Wednesday. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.